welcome to the deep dive. You send us your sources, and we've really taken the plunge to pull out the key insights for you. Today, we're getting into a concept you were curious about. Sex transmutation. Now, I know that might sound a little out there at first.
Yeah, it can sound that way. But fundamentally, based on the material you shared, it's really about changing or transferring the energy of the emotion of sex.
Transferring it where?
Into another form, into other channels. Think of it less like stopping a natural drive and more like transforming its, immense power for different kinds of achievement.
Okay, let's unpack that a little, because let's be honest, when we hear sex, most of us probably jump straight to the purely physical side of things.
Right, that's common.
But this deep dive, based on your sources, suggests that view is, pretty limited. Like we've only been seeing a tiny fraction of the whole picture.
That's exactly the point the material makes. It highlights 3 potential constructive outcomes for the sex emotion.
Right.
Obviously, number 1 is, perpetuation of mankind. The biological side.
Sure, the obvious one.
Then, interestingly, it mentions the maintenance of health, which hints at maybe a therapeutic aspect we don't always think about.
Health, okay.
But the third one, and this is really where our focus is today, is the transformation. The potential to turn mediocrity into, even genius through this process of transmutation.
So the mission you laid out for us, the reason you sent these sources, is to really get a handle on how this incredibly strong human desire can be, redirected for creative breakthroughs and personal growth.
Precisely. And to start, we really have to acknowledge just how powerful this desire is.
Yeah, the sources don't mince words on that, do they?
Not at all. It's described pretty emphatically as the most powerful of all human desires. I mean, just think about the sheer drive it can ignite.
It fuels so much.
Exactly. Keenness of imagination, courage, willpower, persistence, creative ability. People driven by this urge often show surges in all these areas, things they might not normally access.
It's almost like a potent fuel source.
Yeah.
And people will go to incredible lengths when they're driven by it, right? Risk reputation, sometimes even their lives.
Absolutely. Which leads to the really fascinating question the source poses. If it's that strong as a motivator in that one specific area, what happens if we can actually harness that same intense energy and consciously point it somewhere else?
Towards, say, art or business or invention.
Exactly. The material suggests that when this fundamental driving force is deliberately redirected, it keeps those core qualities, the vivid imagination, the boldness, the persistence.
And those qualities become powerful tools.
Incredibly potent drivers in literature, art, science, professions, even building wealth. The energy maintains its character, just channeled differently.
Okay, so the million-dollar question then is how? How does this transmutation actually happen? What are the nuts and bolts?
Well, the source explains it as a conscious mental shift. It's about intentionally turning your thoughts away from the physical expression.
Okay.
And directing them towards thoughts of a different kind entirely. Creative projects, solving a tough problem, achieving a big goal. It's like pivoting your mental energy.
That sounds like it would take some serious mental muscle.
Yeah.
Not something that just happens automatically.
Oh, definitely. The material is very clear. It requires willpower. Real conscious effort to control your thoughts and maintain that focus.
But the payoff is supposed to be worth it.
That's the argument. The potential reward unlocking that capacity for genius, for major achievement, is presented as being well worth the effort involved. And crucially, it's not about seeing the desire itself as bad or something to be, stamped out.
Right, it's not about denial or suppression in that sense.
No, it's a natural energy. The key is finding alternative, enriching outlets for that same energy. It needs a channel.
Like that analogy the source uses. The river.
Exactly. The damned river. You hold the water back, but that force will find an outlet eventually. It's the same with this emotional energy. If it's not consciously transmuted into constructive effort,
it'll likely find a purely physical, maybe less productive outlet.
That's the idea. It's about guiding that powerful current toward, let's say, more constructive harbors. Some individuals, the source suggests, are fortunate enough to discover this creative outlet and really elevate themselves.
Okay, that makes intuitive sense. And the source then brings in some evidence or research to back this up.
It does. It mentions research apparently spanning over 2,000 years of looking at biographies and history.
Wow, 2,000 years. What did they find?
2 main things stood out. First, that the individuals who achieved the really great things, the major historical figures, they often had highly developed sex natures and seem to have mastered this transmutation, consciously or not.
Interesting. Develop sex, nature, plus transmutation.
Right. And second, it found that many men who built great fortunes or gained significant recognition were often deeply motivated by the influence of a woman in their lives.
That connection again, the inspirational spark from a partner.
Exactly. It suggests a very direct link. The source talks about the irresistible force of the sex emotion, even calling it a potential superpower for action.
A superpower, that's strong language.
It is, and the idea is when this raw energy gets channeled through transmutation, it can lift people to what we might perceive as genius. The core argument really is that the emotion of sex holds the secret to creative ability.
To really hammer this point home, the material uses a pretty stark example involving animals.
Yes, it's a bit blunt, maybe, but effective. To show the profound impact of sex glands on drive and action, it looks at castration.
Okay.
When you castrate a bull, for instance, it becomes much more docile, loses that inherent fight, and altering a female sexually has a similar impact on their energy, their disposition.
So removing the source of that energy drastically changes the animal's nature.
It's a clear, if maybe extreme, illustration of the fundamental link between that energy and just
Oh, yeah.
vitality, action, drive.
Gotcha. It definitely makes the point about the raw power involved. Now, the discussion then shifts a bit, framing sex desire as a powerful mind stimulant. What's the angle there?
The source introduces this idea of 10 key mind stimuli, factors that can key up the mind, basically, get it vibrating at a higher rate.
Leading to?
More enthusiasm, a more active creative imagination, more intense desire overall. And what's really striking is where sex desire lands on this list.
Where does it rank?
Right at the very top. It's identified as the single most effective stimulant for boosting mental vibration and, as a result, physical action.
Wow, number one. What are some of the others on that list, just for context?
Sure, it includes things like love, naturally, also a burning desire for fame, power, or money. Music is on there, friendship, the synergy of a mastermind group,
Okay.
also mutual suffering, like bonding through hardship, autosuggestion, fear, and then narcotics and alcohol.
It's an interesting mix. And the source distinguishes between them.
Yes, it notes that 8 of them are generally constructive, while 2, fear and narcotics alcohol, tend to be destructive in their effects.
So by putting sex desire at the absolute peak of these powerful mental triggers, even above things like love or ambition.
Exactly. It's really underlining its potential as this incredibly potent engine for achievement, especially when compared to these other well-known motivators.
And this comparison, according to the source, further proves the idea that transmuting this specific energy can lead to genius.
That's the connection it makes, which of course begs the question, what is genius in this context? How is it being defined here?
Right, because usually we think of genius as just, high IQ or incredible talent, not related to this.
The source offers a different definition. It moves beyond those typical ideas. It defines a genius as someone who has learned how to increase their thought vibrations.
Okay.
To the point where they can readily tap into sources of knowledge that aren't normally accessible through just our regular everyday thinking.
So it's about accessing some kind of higher understanding or a different kind of inspiration. How does the sixth sense fit in here? The source mentions that too.
It does. The sixth sense is directly equated with creative imagination.
Creative imagination, okay.
And the argument is that most people barely use this faculty, or at least not consciously. It's the individuals who learn to deliberately use their creative imagination, understanding how it works, who are considered the genie.
And this creative imagination, this sixth sense, it's presented as the link to. What? Where does it connect us?
It's described as the bridge, the direct connection between our finite individual minds and what the source calls infinite intelligence.
Infinite intelligence, like a universal knowledge source.
Essentially, yes. The origin of, big religious insights, major scientific breakthroughs, those sudden hunches or flashes of inspiration we sometimes get.
Yeah.
The source suggests they could come from 4 places. Infinite intelligence itself, our own subconscious mind, which is like this huge storage tank of all our experiences and thoughts.
Makes sense.
The conscious mind of someone else, or even the subconscious mind of another person.
Okay, so how do we actually tap into this creative imagination more effectively? What conditions are best for it?
The idea is that it works best when the mind is already vibrating at a higher rate, kicked up a notch by 1 or more of those 10 mind stimuli we talked about.
So when you're already feeling motivated or inspired?
Exactly. That heightened mental state kind of lifts you above the usual limits of everyday thought. You get a broader perspective, access to ideas you wouldn't normally have.
Like climbing a mountain and seeing the whole landscape instead of just the path in front of you.
That's a great way to put it. On that higher plane of thought, the creative faculty has more freedom, it's less bogged down, and that's when the sixth sense can receive those ideas that are usually out of reach.
And the sixth sense is what really separates the genius from the average person, according to this source.
That's the clear distinction it makes. And importantly, it's presented as something you can develop.
Like a muscle.
Absolutely. The more you consciously use it, the more alert and receptive it becomes. It gets stronger through deliberate use. Interestingly, the source also connects our conscience, that inner moral guide, to the same sixth sense.
Wow, so our intuition, our gut feelings, maybe even our sense of right and wrong could all be tied into this higher creative function.
That's the implication. And the source gives examples of people who seem to tap into this consciously.
Like who?
Well, great artists, writers, musicians, poets. Many have credited their best ideas to these sudden hunches from their creative imagination. It mentions a skilled orator closing his eyes to connect inwardly, or a successful financier doing the same to access what he called superior intelligence before big decisions.
And then there's that really detailed example of Dr. Elmer R. Gates, his personal communication room. That sounds very deliberate.
Extremely deliberate. He was a hugely successful inventor. He built this soundproof, light-proof room in his lab
Why?
to shut out all external distractions so he could concentrate intensely on the known parts of whatever invention problem he was working on.
Cutting out the noise.
Exactly. By doing that, he created the space where his creative imagination could really take over, leading to these sudden flashes of insight that solved the unknown parts. He apparently got over 200 patents this way.
Incredible. He even did it for companies. Sitting for ideas.
Yeah, acted as a consultant, essentially applying this focused creative process to their problems. It really highlights deliberately setting the stage for breakthroughs.
And the source contrasts this with just relying on logic or reason alone.
Right. Our reasoning, it argues, is limited by our own past experiences, and those experiences aren't always complete or even accurate. Ideas coming through the creative faculty, though, are seen as potentially more reliable because they draw on those broader sources, infinite intelligence, the subconscious.
So it helps tell the difference between, say, a crank inventor just guessing and a true genius inventor.
That's the distinction. The genius uses both. They use their reasoning, their synthetic imagination to organize what they already know. But if that doesn't work,
They switch gears.
they turn consciously to the creative faculty, stimulate the mind, focus hard on the knowns while picturing the unknowns, then sort of let the subconscious work on it. Patiently wait for the insight.
Like Edison with a light bulb. All that trial and error, and then the breakthrough.
Exactly. Diligent work combined with eventually tuning in to that creative faculty for the final piece.
Okay. And then the discussion circles back to something we touched on earlier, the power of love, and specifically the influence of women in sparking genius.
Yes, it brings that back into focus. It uses Abraham Lincoln as a prime example. His development and use of creative imagination are linked strongly to his deep love for Anne Rutledge.
A specific relationship fueling that creative power.
And then there's Napoleon Bonaparte. Huge success while inspired by Josephine, then a decline after they separated. The source directly connects this to having the right kind of sexual influence.
He's not just any influence, but the right influence.
That's the emphasis. It even suggests many successful American men hit their peaks under the positive influence of their wives. It really hammers home this idea that sexual energy, especially when intertwined with love and inspiration from a partner, is a major catalyst for greatness.
So just to reiterate the core idea here, the sex urge itself, when harnessed and transmuted,
Can elevate your thinking, help you rise above worries. But the source notes, while many feel the urge, it's mostly the genie who've really figured out how to tap its higher potential.
and lists examples.
Yeah.
Washington, Napoleon, Lincoln.
Yes, suggesting their genius might well have stemmed, partly at least, from this transmuted energy, given they were known to be highly sexed individuals.
And this is a crucial, but just being highly sexed doesn't make you a genius.
Absolutely not. That's a key distinction. The energy has to be transmuted, redirected. From purely physical desire into other forms, creative work, intellectual pursuits, building something meaningful. Otherwise, the source warns, misunderstanding or misusing this powerful force can actually drag you down, not lift you up.
Which leads to this interesting point about when success often happens. later in life, after 40.
Right. Based on analyzing, supposedly, over 25,000 people, the pattern was clear. Major success often kicks in after 40, even more so after 50.
Yeah, the reason given.
The main theory is that people tend to, well, dissipate that energy through physical indulgence when they're younger before they really understand its other potential uses.
The whole sowing wild oats idea the source
Yeah,
mentions.
exactly. It's like a period of unharnessed energy before learning to direct it purposefully. But that strong driving nature of the desire is what makes it so potent for transmutation once that shift happens.
Even later in life. The anecdotes about businessmen.
Yeah, crediting inspiration to, say, a secretary or another woman later in life shows the energy can still be a catalyst.
Okay. The source also briefly touches on artificial stimulants, alcohol, narcotics for creativity. What's the verdict there?
It acknowledges historical examples like Poe or Burns,
Yeah.
people who used substances, but it strongly cautions against it. Many who relied on them ended up self-destructing. The main message is, nature provides safer, more sustainable ways to stimulate the mind for creativity.
Makes sense. And then, kind of surprisingly, it links sex desires and spiritual urges.
Yeah.
How does that connection work?
It notes a close, observable relationship between them. It even points to the heightened emotional states sometimes seen in religious revivals as a possible example of this underlying connection.
Interesting. Just showing how fundamental and multifaceted this energy is.
Exactly. Which leads into the broader idea about emotions driving us more than just pure reason.
Right. That civilization is shaped more by feeling than just logic.
That's the assertion. Human emotions rule the world, and the creative faculty is activated by emotion, with sex being arguably the most powerful one.
So a mind stimulant is just anything that ramps up thought vibrations.
Pretty much. And these stimulants are the path to communing with infinite intelligence or accessing the subconscious, which again is equated with genius.
Yeah, and this connects to personal magnetism, especially in sales.
Yes, drawing on experience training thousands of salespeople. The finding: highly sexed men were often the most effective.
What?
Because of this personal magnetism, which the source directly equates to sex energy. People with plenty of it communicate it subtly.
How?
Handshake, tone of voice, posture, carriage, thought vibrations, even appearance. Good sales managers look for this, apparently.
So if you lack that energy, you struggle with enthusiasm.
Yeah.
Harder to inspire others.
That's the idea. Master salespeople, maybe without even knowing it, are transmuting that energy into sales enthusiasm. It's presented as a practical, real-world example of transmutation.
Taking that drive and focusing it professionally.
Right, it takes willpower, sure, but it's a skill that can be developed.
It's fascinating seeing it applied so practically. But the source also tackles how sex itself is often misunderstood, even slandered.
Yeah, it confronts the ignorance around it, how it's been portrayed negatively, making the word itself almost taboo.
And the irony.
That highly sexed people are often viewed suspiciously, not seen as potentially blessed with a powerful creative force. This false belief can even lead to inferiority complexes.
So the virtue isn't in denial, but in intelligent use.
Exactly. Intelligent, discriminate use and direction. It's not advocating for being reckless, but for a better use through transmutation. And it circles back again to that finding about great leaders being inspired by women.
Often a wife, sometimes someone else significant.
Right. Then it shifts to the dangers of intemperance in sex habits, like overdoing it with drinking or eating.
So too much can be harmful.
Just like with alcohol or food, yes, it argues excess can be damaging. It even speculates that the sexual indulgence of the time might contribute to a lack of great leaders because dissipating that creative force prevents accessing its higher uses.
Humans are unique in overdoing it in this area, it says.
Apparently so, violating nature's moderation. It compares the destructive effects of too much alcohol or drugs to overindulgence in sex-impairing reason, willpower, potentially leading to instability or hypochondria.
So it's about balance and conscious direction, not letting it run wild. And ignorance about transmutation has real costs.
Big penalties and lost benefits, the source claims. And this ignorance comes from the mystery and silence around the topic. Like prohibition, it just fuels curiosity without real understanding.
Okay. Then it talks about peak creative periods again.
Yeah, reinforcing that highly creative efforts often start after 40, peaking between 40 and 60, based on thousands of observations.
So encouragement for those maybe feeling they haven't hit their stride by 40.
Definitely. And it gives examples Ford, Carnegie, James J. Hill guys whose biggest successes came after 40.
Which ties back to maybe learning transmutation later.
Right.
And this leads into harmonizing love and sex.
Right. Between 30 and 40, people often start learning transmutation, maybe accidentally, as nature blends love and sex.
Sex alone is powerful, but maybe chaotic.
Like a cyclone, the source says. But combine it with the stability of love, and you get more calmness, poise, better judgment, balance. It asks listeners over 40 to reflect on this.
So actions driven by just sex might be disorganized, but add love, and there's more sanity.
That's the idea. It even mentions criminologists finding love, not just sex, can reform criminals. Real change comes from the heart, the emotions, not just the head.
And the ultimate power trio is love, romance, and sex.
Yes, driving super achievement. Love is the safety valve, providing balance. Though it admits some genie lack love and can be destructive, this leads to the chemistry of the mind idea.
An analogy for how emotions mix.
Exactly. Like mixing chemicals can make poison, mixing destructive emotions, say sex drive and jealousy, can be toxic, poisoning your sense of justice, your reason.
So the path to genius involves cultivating the positive emotions.
Right. Encourage love, sex, romance as dominant thoughts. Use willpower and habit to discourage the negative ones. Controlling the mind takes persistence and understanding transmutation.
And negative emotions can be transmuted just by changing thoughts.
That's the claim. But genius requires voluntary effort. And a warning. Financial success from just sex energy might lack the character for lasting happiness. Important for everyone to grasp.
The source then claims love and sex leave visible marks on your face.
Yeah, unmistakable marks on facial features. It contrasts the look of pure passion with the softening, beautifying effect when love is mixed in. Love leaves an imprint on the soul, it says.
And love's power endures, even after the relationship ends.
Memories of real love never pass, it argues. They keep guiding you because love is spiritual. If love doesn't move you to achieve, you're hopeless, it says quite strongly.
Wow. It even suggests revisiting old love memories.
To soften present worries, maybe unlock ideas, don't regret loved and lost, because true love leaves positive traces. Love comes and goes, each unique. Don't be crushed by its departure. Understand the difference between spiritual love and just biological sex.
It really elevates love to this ultimate experience.
Connects you to infinite intelligence, leads to creative heights when combined with romance and sex. Love has many forms: family, friends, nature. But romantic sexual love is the most intense blend.
And marriages need both love and sex to thrive.
If they lack that balance, they're often unhappy, less likely to last. Adding romance removes blocks to infinite intelligence, allowing genius to emerge.
And understanding this could fix marital problems like nagging.
That's the suggestion. If the foundation is love, romance, and understanding sex, harmony is more likely. A husband is fortunate if his wife gets this connection. Work becomes a labor of love.
Which brings back that saying, a man's wife may either make him or break him.
Based on her understanding or lack thereof of these emotions. It acknowledges men's polygamous tendencies, but says the wife usually has the most influence unless she's ill-suited.
Her ignorance or indifference can make him lose interest.
Yes, and the same applies vice versa. Trivial arguments often stem from deeper indifference or ignorance about these things.
And ultimately, the core motivator for men is
the desire to please women. From prehistoric times onward. Providing, achieving, driven by gaining female favor.
This gives women immense power.
Huge, often underestimated power to make or break a man. A woman who understands this and caters to it skillfully doesn't need to fear competition.
Men might act tough, but they're easily influenced by the women they care about.
That's the point. Intelligent women know this and don't necessarily challenge it head-on. Some men know it too and accept it. Understanding the right woman's influence is vital for happiness and success.
And denying this truth just holds men back.
Deprives them of a powerful force for achievement, the source concludes.
Okay, wow. That was a really comprehensive journey through this concept. If we were to boil it down, what's the absolute core message here from this deep dive?
I think it's the sheer, often overlooked, power within the sex emotion. It's so much more than just biology. It's this potent energy that if you understand it and consciously redirect it, transmute it.
It can fuel amazing things.
Yeah, creative genius, personal growth, even practical success in areas like business or how you relate to people. It's a fundamental force with incredible potential.
And crucially, it's not automatic. It takes conscious effort, right? Willpower.
Absolutely. It's an active process. And while the biology is there, the source really stresses how vital the emotional and spiritual sides are, love, romance, for achieving something lasting and truly fulfilling. It's about integrating all of it.
Definitely a lot to think about. So for you, our listener, the final thought might be this. You've heard about the potential of this powerful force within you. How might you consciously start to channel that energy towards your own goals, your own aspirations? How could you unlock some of that untapped creative potential?
Maybe, like the source suggests, digging into the lives of successful people with this lens, this new understanding, could reveal even more.
A fascinating possibility. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.